Chapter 841. Old Demon Desire began to teach Tang Wuling, and it was just as the rotund old man had said, all of the torture had already been endured, and these were only normal lessons. Tang Wuling was certainly not slow on the uptake, and not only was he learning very quickly, he also quickly began to derive joy from his learning. Just as Old Demon Desire had said, the things that she was teaching him weren't going to make him stronger, but they were all extremely practical survival skills that would make him a lot more well-rounded rather than a brute who only knew how to fight. Old Demon Desire wasn't his only teacher. Soon, hatred, scourge, nightmare, and gluttony all appear before him one after another, bestowing all types of complex knowledge upon him. Tang Wuling heard from them that even as far back as 10,000 years ago, Shrek Academy had been determined to nurture well-rounded warriors that could adapt to all types of battlefields and thrive in all conditions. In the earliest stages of this training regimen's implementation, there was only one successful subject, and that was the founder of the Spirit Pagoda, the legendary Spirit Ice Douluo, who were Yuao. Now, Shrek Academy still hadn't given up on this project, but it was being carried out here as opposed to within the academy. Only those who could pass all the trials within a year had the privilege of learning all of this knowledge that was being bestowed upon Tang Wuling now, and he had displayed the best performance out of anyone in 1,000 years. During all of the previous trials, the most important and also the most difficult ones were the two aircraft stealing trials. In particular, stealing an aircraft for the second time was extremely difficult as it required one to cross the demonic sea, then infiltrate the North Sea Legion base before successfully emerging with an aircraft, and barely anyone had been able to complete that trial. In fact, only 3 people had accomplished this during the past 200 years, and all of them went on to become the master of the Sea God's Pavilion at some point. The current Pavilion Master, Atlas Douluo Yunming, was one of those 3. Tang Wuling was soaking up all of the knowledge being imparted on him like an eager sponge, and he was beginning to incorporate all of these pieces of knowledge. There were many things that he didn't really take notice of during daily life, but only after studying them did he discover how intriguing and complex those subjects were. For example, Old Demon Gluttony was giving Tang Wuling lessons on the properties of all types of food ingredients, as well as how different ingredients had to be prepared for maximal nutritional value. This also involved lessons about how to identify different ingredients among plants, animals, and marine organisms. Tang Wuling was absorbing a vast amount of knowledge every day, and he was constantly learning and experimenting for 3 whole months almost without any rest. He didn't know how the 5 demons had managed to do this, but they were always able to provide corresponding material to assist him in his learning and cultivation. All right, we've taught you everything there is to be taught. Now, it's up to you to incorporate this knowledge for yourself. When you return to the continent, there will be many more things for you to learn, and I'm sure this knowledge will all be applicable to your life at some point. Thank you, seniors. Following these 3 months, Tang Wuling's hatred toward these 5 demons had finally been wiped clean. Furthermore, he was also gauging the situations that his friends were in, and they were also doing quite well. They'd been on this island for 10 months already, and even though they weren't progressing as quickly as he did, at the very least, none of them had been broken by the demons. They wouldn't be able to learn everything he had, but at the very least, this experience would still be an immensely valuable one to them. Old Demon Desire said, "You can stay on the island for the rest of your time here. You deserve some time to relax. We have the best food here, and a comfortable place for you to live at. After all of your friends complete their trials, you can all leave together." When Tang Wuling was taken to his living quarters, he was completely stunned. It was a complete understatement to call this a comfortable place to live. This was a treehouse, and Tang Wuling didn't know how it had been constructed, but the life force energy here was even more abundant than in the rest of the valley. There were all types of furniture, devices, and appliances here, even some very modern pieces of technology. There was a large comfortable bed, and as soon as he sat down onto it, he was struck by a wave of drowsiness. After being tortured for 6 months, then studying for 3 months, Tang Wuling was completely exhausted. Following the departure of Old Demon Desire, who had taken him here, he fell asleep almost right away. He slept for 3 days and 3 nights, and when he woke up again, Old Demon Gluttony had already brought him all types of high-grade foods that were filled with life force energy. As he enjoyed his splendid feast, Tang Wuling was almost moved to the point of tears. The rainbow had finally appeared after the storm. The scenery on the demonic island wasn't all that beautiful, but Tang Wuling's treehouse was situated very high up, so he could even see the blue sea in the distance. The distant scenery was glorious, and Tang Wuling hadn't been at peace like this for an extremely long time. After filling his stomach, he immediately fell onto his bed and began to sleep again. What could be more blissful than this? He had the best food and the best living environment, and no one was there to force him to cultivate. He was living in absolute freedom and bliss. All of the pressure on his shoulders had been alleviated, and all he had to do now was to wait for his friends before departing from this place together. Tang Wuling sat on the lounge chair in front of the treehouse and cast his gaze toward the ocean. His entire body felt warm and extremely relaxed and comfortable. Even the cries of the insects and birds around him were like music to his ears. He stretched lazily and began to feel drowsy once again. He had been eating delicious food and sleeping his days away every single day. What could be more blissful than this? A faint smile appeared on his face, and he stood up before stretching again, then returning to his room. At this moment, the rotund old man, Old Demon Desire, Old Demon Scourge, Old Demon Gluttony, Old Demon Nightmare, and Old Demon Hatred were all gathered together in a cave. Before was an image that depicted Tang Wuling, who had just returned to his room after some lazy stretching. This kid sure is getting complacent, the rotund old man said in a smug voice. Old Demon Desire pursed her lips. What are you looking so smug for? He's only grown so complacent because of all of our efforts. Even so, I'll still get the last laugh in the end. This kid really was hard to fool. I can't believe he learned so much stuff during just 3 months. Tisk, tisk. But no matter how smart or wily he is, he's still no match for me. Wait a minute, don't celebrate too early. Old Demon Scourge suddenly said in a surprised manner. He's not sleeping. The perspective of the image changed to within the room, and it depicted Tang Wuling with a slightly lazy smile on his face. However, he hadn't laid down to sleep. Instead, he was sitting on his bed with his legs crossed, and hands were placed on his knees with the palms facing upward. He had entered a meditative state and was cultivating his mysterious heaven method. The 6 old demons were completely flabbergasted. We gave him the best living conditions and the best food, yet he still has the heart to meditate. This is impossible. No person in their right mind would still have the motivation to cultivate under these circumstances. The rotund old man was filled with astonishment and befuddlement. Old Demon Desire immediately burst into laughter. That's what you get for being so cocky. That's right, Tang Wuling had begun to cultivate. He silently sensed the rich life force energy in the air, and as he activated his mysterious heaven method, he slowly absorbed these pure and abundant natural energies into his body. He didn't try to accelerate the circulation of his mysterious heaven method and only maintained a natural pace. His bloodline aura was also slowly circulating along with his mysterious heaven method. Thus, he combed through his soul power and bloodline power in an unhurried manner. He was being very careful as he was worried that he'd accidentally break through his 9th Golden Dragon King seal. As long as it wasn't completely necessary or out of his control, he definitely wouldn't try to break his seals. The more he absorbed the Golden Dragon King's energy, the more powerful yet cautious he became. The Golden Dragon King's energy bestowed upon him immense power along with some other things. This type of indescribable energy was changing him in profound ways. For example, in the past, Tang Wuling's style of battle was versatile, and on many occasions, he won through tactics and resourcefulness. However, as his Golden Dragon King bloodline had become more powerful, he found himself gravitating toward a battle style that relied solely on pure strength. Furthermore, his emotions had also become far more steely than in the past. He had been on the demonic island for close to a year, and during this time, he had endured all types of unspeakable torture. Throughout this process, his mental state had constantly been changing, and that allowed him to sense his internal problems more clearly. Chapter 842. Behind all of the immense power that he was attaining, he could sense an unknown threat that was lurking. The negative side effects of the Golden Dragon King's bloodline power were becoming more and more apparent to him. It was indeed tremendously powerful, but power could only serve him for the better if he could control it. As such, he couldn't allow it to go out of control no matter what, which was why during his cultivation, Tang Wuling was constantly using his mysterious heaven method to fuse his soul power with his bloodline. In doing so, he was using the pure nature of the mysterious heaven method to filter his bloodline power of the unwanted elements it contained. Doing this didn't result in drastic improvements to his cultivation base, but it was constantly minimizing the risk of something going wrong. Furthermore, his mysterious heaven method soul power was also further compressed during this process. He may only be a 5-ring sulking at the moment, but his levels of soul power compression and purity were definitely far superior to others of the same cultivation rank. He was meditating now as he wanted to truly incorporate everything that he'd learned during the past year. easier, so he wasn't in a hurry to improve his soul power. Back when Yu Chen was instructing him in forging, the first lesson that had been taught to him was that it was imperative to build up a stable foundation before trying to scale to new heights. Only with a sound base would one go further in the future. As such, Tang Wuling wasn't in any hurry in his cultivation at the moment. He was merely meditating while slowly circulating his soul power and bloodline power while experiencing all of the minute changes happening within his body. Human bodies had countless secrets to be explored, as did martial souls. As he sensed all of the changes taking place all over his body, this notion became clearer and clearer to him. He gradually began to enter a profound state of mediation that was different from normal meditation. It only took 10 minutes to enter deep meditation. This kid is a freak. Old Demon Nightmare's speechless expression was mirrored on the faces of all of the other 5 old demons. What do we do? What can we do? It's not like we can just rouse him from his deep meditation. It shouldn't be like this. The rotund old man was at the height of his frustration and indignation. That's what you get. The profound state that Tang Wuling was in lasted for an indeterminate period of time, and during this process, his soul power continued to circulate in a natural manner. When he slowly came to his senses again, he was surprised to discover that in his own mind, his body seemed to have become transparent. Everything within his body had taken on a faint golden color, and everything was in perfect harmony. Golden and white soul power drew his bloodline power into a repetitive cycle, thereby forming a vortex. The vortex wasn't very large, but it was filled with extremely abundant soul power that had taken on a liquid form. The gentle soul power vortex combined perfectly with his bloodline power and rotated in a peaceful manner. Tang Wuling could clearly sense that his soul power had become stronger. Even more importantly, all of the energies within his body seemed to be in perfect order. Life force energy was constantly nurturing his entire body, strengthening his flesh, bones, and internal organs while giving them a transparent, almost crystalline appearance. Tang Wuling didn't know what kind of state his body was in, but it seemed to have reached a higher level. As for the soul power vortex in his dantian, he knew a little bit about this. However, it was something that should only appear within the bodies of soul masters after attaining their 6th soul ring. There was a major bottleneck between soul emperors and soul sages, and this stemmed from the fact that a qualitative change had to take place within one's soul power to facilitate that breakthrough. A 7-ring soul sage had to manifest a soul core, and only then could their cultivation rank reach 70. After that, they'd enhance themselves through fusing their bodies with their soul spirits or soul rings, thereby attaining a martial soul true body and ascending to another level. Only after becoming a soul sage could one be considered as a high-grade soul master. It was undoubtedly the case that Tang Wuling was still very far away from that stage, but forming a soul power vortex was a mandatory step on the path to manifesting a soul core. It could also be said that a soul power vortex was the foundation of a soul core. After a soul master attains a soul power vortex, they'd be able to absorb more natural energies, and through the constant rotation of the vortex, their soul power would be compressed steadily until it became a solid soul core. Tang Wuling's soul power was currently only at rank 53, so he was still over 10 ranks away from becoming a soul sage. Generally speaking, soul masters would only attempt to form soul power vortexes at rank 69, and after that, the soul power vortex would naturally form a soul core, thereby completing the breakthrough. This process was far slower than cultivating at lower ranks, which was why there were so few soul masters above rank 70. Once a soul core was formed, a soul master would experience a massive increase in their ability to sense and guide natural energies, thereby making them extremely powerful. After getting to that stage, they wouldn't have to worry about exhausting their soul power, as their soul core would be able to constantly replenish their soul power from drawing upon natural energies. As long as there wasn't any extremely excessive expenditure of soul power during a battle, a soul sage's soul power should virtually be limitless. Tang Wuling was only at rank 53, yet he had already formed a soul power vortex. This indicated that not only was his level of soul power compression far superior to that of others at the same cultivation rank, it also showed that his understanding of his own soul power had also far outstripped that of his peers. Tang Wuling immediately experienced the greatest benefit of having a soul power vortex. Through its power, he was able to better control his bloodline power so that it didn't break through his 9th golden dragon king seal. This was a very pleasant surprise. Furthermore, Tang Wuling could clearly sense that his soul power had increased from rank 52 to rank 53. Going up 2 soul power ranks in a year wasn't fantastic by any means, but this type of improvement was extremely consistent and reliable. Furthermore, he had learned so much during this past year as well. He could conclude his meditation now, and he had no idea how much time had passed. Just as he was about to awaken from his meditative state, his body suddenly shuddered, and an indescribable sensation welled up in his heart. It was as if a seed had been planted in his body, and it had grown into a seedling that was finally beginning to release its life force energy. This was an extremely wonderful feeling. It was as if his entire body had instantly been surrounded by boundless life force energy, as if he had been completely inundated by a sea of life force energy that was rich to the extreme. Whoosh! All of a sudden, 6 heads turned toward a certain direction in unison. Expressions of astonishment appeared on the faces of all 6 old demons. What's going on? They were greeted by the sight of a green pillar of light erupting into the sky from somewhere on the island. The immense life force energy on the island suddenly multiplied by several fold. This was an extremely rare scenario, and all of the old demons were completely stunned. Life tide. Didn't the last life tide only appear 20 years ago? Why is there another one now? Life tides only occurred on the demonic island once every 100 years, and when they appeared, the destructive energy on the island would be at its most feeble, while the life energy spiked to its maximal extent. Every time this took place, huge numbers of sea soul beasts would gather near the demonic island to absorb this life energy in order to facilitate evolution. This was why there were so many powerful sea soul beasts near the demonic islands. As opposed to keeping people from coming out, they were protecting the islands from intruders. This type of life tide benefited soul beasts even more so than it did humans, and it could even directly trigger positive mutations in a soul beast's bloodline, thereby making them truly evolve into high-level life forms. However, the last life tide had just taken place 20 years ago, so this was completely unexpected and unprecedented. Streaks of light flashed through the air as the old demons quickly gathered together. Chapter 843. Aside from the original 6, a new old demon had joined them. This demon's appearance was rather comical. He had small eyes, a large nose, and wide mouth, an extremely long chin, and a hunchback. Despite his appearance, all of the other 6 old demons very naturally stood before him in a formation of subordination. Why has a life tide suddenly appeared, boss? Old Demon Scourge asked in an urgent manner. The old man shook his head with tightly furrowed brows. I don't know what happened, either. I've been restricting the destructive energy on this island this entire time, and all of a sudden, the destructive energy suddenly became weaker, immediately following which this life tide appeared. This life tide is also different from the ones in the past. Under normal circumstances, I can sense a life tide around 10 years before it arrives as it steadily builds before erupting all at once. However, this life tide arrived without any premonition. Go and release those kids so they can be blessed by this life tide. They really are extremely fortunate to have encountered a life tide. I'll go right away. Old Demon Nightmare immediately volunteered. Wait a minute, look at the direction the life tide is stemming from. The rotund old man suddenly said. It's coming from his treehouse? Old Demon Scourge also quickly realized what was happening. What's going on? The unfamiliar old man who had just appeared asked. Old Demon Desire explained. It's that Tang Wuling. He's been in deep meditation for over 3 months, and the life tide seems to be stemming from where he is rather than from around the fragment of destruction. This is really strange. Could it be that his deep meditation triggered this life tide? How is that even possible? Old Demon Hatred was completely incredulous. All of the old demons glanced at one another to see their own astonishment mirrored on each other's faces. They'd been here for over 1,000 years, and they grasped all of the patterns on this demonic island. Whenever something that didn't follow these patterns occurred, they would gain a greater understanding of the demonic island. Even though they were only spiritual entities, they were the guardians of this place, so it was naturally imperative for them to understand as much as they could about this place. Let's go. The leader of the old demons waved a hand, and all 7 of them vanished amid flashes of light. Tang Wuling didn't know what was happening in the outside world. He could only feel the life force energy around him becoming more and more abundant, and it was enveloping him like a massive cocoon. This was a very unique and wonderful feeling. He couldn't even breathe anymore, but he had never felt so comfortable before. Unbeknownst to him, a halo of light had appeared around his body. It wasn't one of his normal blue silver emperor soul rings, and nor was it one of his golden bloodline soul rings. Instead, it was that greenish golden soul ring. The soul ring glowed with a peculiar light, and when he first attained it, he couldn't even activate its power after injecting all of his soul power into it. Only with the assistance of Atlas Douluo Youngming was he able to activate it for a short time. Tang Wuling had named the soul skill that this soul ring gave him Son of Nature. At this moment, the greenish golden soul ring was glowing brighter than it ever had, and the rich life force energy emanating from it was fusing as one with the energy from the life tide. Throughout this process, the entire demonic island was shuddering slightly, and in the distant ocean, countless sea soul beasts surged toward the island in a frenzy. More and more sea soul beasts began to gather to absorb the immensely rich life force energy here. Tang Wulin's consciousness was completely immersed in life force energy around him, and much to his surprise, a series of illusionary images were appearing deep within his mind. He saw a 9-colored ball of light that was flashing steadily, and every time it flashed, it struck the beholder with the sense that their soul had been elevated to a higher plane. The ball of light then gradually began to expand to several times its original size. At the same time, it also became more and more transparent as if its exterior were thinning out. Tang Wulin could see clouds and mist, as well as mountains and rivers within the ball of light. It was an incredible sight to behold. Right at this moment, a burst of powerful grey energy surged forth from the distance. The grey energy was far too enormous, spread over the entirety of heaven and earth, encompassing everything in his field of view, including that ball of light. The light from the 9-colored ball began to flash more rapidly, and with every single flash, the ball would shatter violently. Thin cracks began to appear on its surface, and it seemed to be about to shatter in the face of the grey energy. However, right at this moment, the surface of the ball of light suddenly transformed, and 2 balls of light appeared. One of them was green while the other was purple, and they combined to form a mystical white light that encompassed the entire 9-colored ball of light within it. The cracks sealed, and the 9-colored ball of light shrank down again, making it impossible to see what was inside it, but at the very least, it didn't shatter. The enormous and terrifying burst of grey energy swept forth, and the 9-colored ball of light trembled incessantly before being swept away into the distance. For some reason, a hint of indescribable sorrow welled up from deep within Tang Wulin's heart upon seeing this. At this moment, he wanted nothing more than to yell with all his might and latch onto that ball of light. All of a sudden, 3 specks of light began to expand in his field of view. 2 of the specks of light were purple and green, but compared to the balls of light that had protected the 9-colored ball of light, these 2 specks of light were a lot more feeble. The 2 of them gradually became clearer to Tang Wulin as they clashed over and over again, and he discovered that there was a humanoid figure within each ball of light. However, they were extremely faint and indistinct, to the extent that they were only barely visible. The purple figure seemed to be a man, while the green figure appeared to be a woman. They were trying to reach for one another, but were simply unable to do so. Finally, following one more clash, the purple figure shattered into countless tiny purple shards that flew away in all directions. The green figure let loose a cry of grief before also disintegrating into specks of green light that proliferated outward. These specks of green light latched onto those purple shards before winding themselves around the shards like a series of green vines. The 3rd speck of light also became clear to Tang Wulin at this moment, and it was a golden ball of light. His heart rate suddenly accelerated drastically at the sight of it, and a strong sense of sorrow and dejection welled up in his heart. The speck of golden light abruptly began to expand before him, and in the next instant, everything disappeared. Both Tang Wulin's body and soul trembled uncontrollably, and he was unable to collect himself even after a long while. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally gradually regained his composure. Life and destruction, those were life and destruction that he'd just witnessed. The purple light seemed to represent destruction, while the green light represented life. So what did that golden light represent? And what was that ball of light that destruction and creation had both tried to protect? Only a short time had passed in real life, but Tang Wulin felt as if he'd been in this trance-like state for an entire century. He could clearly sense that there was something extra in his mind, but he simply couldn't grasp it or make sense of it. He exhaled in a resigned manner before slowly opening his eyes. Much to his surprise, a series of green and purple halos had appeared around him, and they were gradually fading away. There was nothing different with his body, but he had a unique indescribable sensation in his heart. He inspected himself internally and was surprised to find that something had appeared at the center of his recently formed soul power vortex. These were 2 tiny specks of light, one of which was green while the other was purple. They were slowly rotating around one another, and when Tang Wulin tried to decipher what they were by directing his consciousness toward those balls of light, he was struck by a sense of disorientation before everything became blurry in his mind. A short while later, everything returned to normal, and he found himself inspecting those 2 specks of light once again. Did they stem from life and destruction? But why had they appeared in his body? He already had the Golden Dragon King bloodline and mysterious heaven method soul power. Was it not crowded enough already in there? More importantly, Tang Wulin had no idea whether having these energies in his body was a blessing or a curse. He shook his head in a speechless manner before opening his eyes once again. Ugh, you. He was given quite a fright as he was greeted by the sight of 7 pairs of eyes, all of which were focused intently on him. In addition to the 6 old demons he'd seen before, a new one had appeared, and he was standing directly before Tang Wulin. Both a life tide and destruction tide had appeared at the same time, and he triggered both of them. What did you do? The old man asked in an urgent manner. Chapter 844. Tang Wulin was quite befuddled. I didn't do anything. I was just meditating, and I have no idea what happened after that. He was telling the truth. He had no idea what had happened, and as for what he had experienced just now, he wasn't planning to disclose those details. Run us through what you've been doing just now. Old demon Scourge prompted. A cold smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face. Release me and my friends, and I'll consider telling you. All of the old demons faltered upon hearing this, and the rotund old man flared up with rage. Have you gone insane, you little bastard? Don't you know you should respect your elders? Tang Wulin chuckled in response. Respect my elders? If I'm not mistaken, you're old demon sloth, right? All of the old demons were stunned to hear this, and their expressions changed slightly as they appraised Tang Wulin. Old demon sloth wore an incredulous look as he asked, how did you know? Tang Wulin smiled, and replied, I guessed, and it looks like I guessed right. It's all thanks to your teachings that I've managed to deduce everything. Let me break this down for you all. After enduring old demon Desire's trial, I'd endured the worst of the torture that was being inflicted on me. After that, you told me that you were once Shrek's 7 monsters. I wasn't entirely convinced by that, but at the very least, you've disclosed one piece of information to me, which is that there should be 7 of you. 6 of you have already become old demons, so the other one must have also suffered the same fate. Tang Wulin turned to the rotund old man, and continued, there were 5 demons who tortured us, and you're the 6th one, but you refused to tell me your name, so I was quite suspicious of you from the get-go. However, the story you told made complete sense, and from my deduction, I could tell that the story was most likely true. Not only were you testing us, you were also nurturing us. During the next few months, I became even more convinced by this notion as you began to teach me all types of things, and I really did learn a lot. However, I never let down my guard even for a split second. The first 5 demons all derived joy from torturing us. Is the 6th demon supposed to be a saint? Even right before I went into meditation, I couldn't make up my mind about everything. After all, you've all been so good to me for the past few months that my animosity toward you all has basically been completely wiped away. That is, until I opened my eyes and saw 7 of you. I was right in that there were indeed 7 of you in total, and in that case, an alternative explanation has arisen for everything that you, old demon sloth, have been doing. You've been luring me into complacency. You were all genuinely bestowing knowledge upon me, and the story you told was also true. So the only issue left is your identity. You're old demon sloth because everything you did was working toward luring me into a false sense of security. After I learned everything and was given the best living conditions I could imagine, all of the exhaustion that I'd accumulated during the past year would undoubtedly catch up to me, and I would inevitably become complacent. You did all of this so I would drop my guard and become lazy. Perhaps you wanted to see whether I would still have the will to continue cultivating under such conditions. Isn't that right, senior sloth? All of the old demons wore peculiar expressions upon hearing his analysis, and of course, old demon sloth was the most appalled among all of them. This is impossible. I could clearly sense that you completely relaxed and lowered your guard. After a year of torture and learning, even the most mentally resolute person can't continue to remain calm and objective. Old demon sloth countered in an indignant manner. Tang Wulin shrugged in response. You're right, I did completely relax at the time because my mind would have been broken had I not allowed myself to relax. However, I wasn't worried in the slightest that I would embrace laziness and lose my will to improve myself because there's something in my heart that's constantly spurring me on. Old demon sloth faltered upon hearing this. What is it? Tang Wulin turned to old demon Desire and said, Senior Desire should know the answer to that question. It's love. For the person I love, I have to become more powerful so I can possess the ability to protect her. Hence, I can rest, but only on the condition that it will benefit my future cultivation. Hence, I began to meditate, and it looks like I was pretty much spot on with my deductions. I have to thank all of you for training and educating me for the past year. Now then, what trial do you have for me, Senior? Tang Wulin turned to the new demon he'd never seen before with a faint smile on his face. The old man smiled and began to applaud him. Fantastic. The Academy hasn't placed their hopes on the wrong people. Looks like our Shrek Academy will be producing another freakish prodigy. I'm extremely elated to see this. My name is Greed. You may refer to me as Old Demon Greed. Old Demon Greed. As expected, there were 7 old demons, and just as Tang Wulin had deduced, each of them represented one of the 7 cardinal sins. What kind of trial do you have for me? Tang Wuling asked. Old Demon Breed smiled and replied, there's no need for that. You've already passed. Your mindset and intelligence are unmatched, so my trial would simply be pointless to you. Your demonic island military training is over. Congratulations on being our most exceptional trainee in at least the past 500 years. Tang Wuling didn't bother to ask who had performed better than him over 500 years ago, and he became a lot more relaxed upon hearing this. A serious expression then appeared on Old Demon Breed's face as he continued. However, you have to tell us what happened to you that triggered both the life tide and destruction tide at the same time. Back when only the life tide had appeared, we were only surprised, but after the destruction tide also appeared at the same time, we knew that something special was going on. This kind of change could affect this entire cluster of demonic islands, so we need to know the truth. Tang Wuling sighed. I'm sorry, senior, due to the fantastic training all of you have provided me with. The first lesson that I learned is to not easily trust others. Hence, I still can't figure out whether you're lying to me or not, so I can't tell you anything. All of the old demons were completely speechless upon hearing this. They felt as if they'd shot themselves in the foot. Old Demon Scourge asked, what do we have to do for you to tell us? Tang Wuling replied, I'll reveal everything in the instant that my friends and I are about to leave this place. To be honest, I don't even know whether I'm in reality or in a dream right now because there are too many things here that aren't real. Old Demon Nightmare raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. As expected, you really have caught on. In that case, I'll rouse you from your dream first. He waved a hand toward Tang Wuling as he spoke, and a wave of dizziness swept past, following which everything quickly transformed. The treehouse disappeared along with the beautiful scenery in the distance, and when he recovered from the rush of dizziness, he found himself standing on the spot in the valley where he'd first fallen unconscious around a year ago. His friends were all lying nearby, and they were all doing different things. Some were leaping and running, and some were seated with their legs crossed. All of them wore different expressions on their faces and seemed to be undertaking different tasks. Are they all hallucinating? Tang Wuling asked in a surprised manner. Old Demon Nightmare replied in a cryptic manner. What is reality and what is illusion? Chapter 845. Tang Wuling hurriedly inspected his internal condition to find that his soul power was still there, as were those green and purple specks of light. Everything that he had learned was also cemented firmly in his mind. Those hallucinations were simply far too terrifying and realistic, and he may have spent over a year trapped in them. Inside the hallucinations, time passes at a quarter of the speed as it does in the real world. So you've only been here for less than 4 months. Old Demon Greed said. Your friends still haven't completed their trials, so they'll require some more time. What I have to tell you is that it won't be a good thing for them to have their trials brought to premature ends. They need to go through the complete process and rebuild themselves on a psychological level, especially that kid. Old Demon Nightmare pointed at Yue's Henyu as he spoke. Tang Wuling immediately recalled Yue's Henyu's horrific experiences, and as he looked around at the 7 old demons, he finally truly believed him. All right, I'll tell you all what happened. Firstly, I really don't know how I managed to trigger this life tide and destruction tide that all of you are talking about. From my perspective, I could only suddenly sense that the life energy around me had become more powerful at the conclusion of my meditation, and after that, I saw a really strange sequence of scenes. Thus, Tang Wuling gave all of the old demons a specific recount of everything he'd seen, only neglecting to tell them about the 2 specks of light that had appeared in his soul power vortex. He was still maintaining a shred of caution, so he naturally couldn't reveal everything. At the same time, he disclosed all of this information as he also wanted to hear the old demons' analysis. They were the beings that were most familiar with the life and destruction energies on the demonic islands, so their input on this matter would definitely be the most reliable. After hearing Tang Wuling's story, all 7 old demons' brows furrowed in unison as if they'd all fallen into deep thought. The purple light is definitely destruction, while the green light is to be life. This means that you most likely saw projections of the goddess of life and the god of destruction when you were in your trance-like state. There's only one place that they would protect, and that's the divine realm. Perhaps what you saw explains why we've been unable to contact the divine realm. This is extremely important information. I'll compile a detailed report based on what you've told us, then get you to deliver that report to the master of the Sea God's Pavilion after you get back to the academy. Old Demon Greed said in a serious manner. I'll be happy to do that. Tang Wuling immediately nodded in response. Old Demon Greed continued. I just don't understand why you were able to trigger all of this. Did you feel anything else at the time? And what was that golden speck of light? Tang Wuling replied. I don't know, either. But when I saw the golden speck of light, my emotions suddenly began to fluctuate violently, and I was struck by a strong sense of sorrow reminiscent of when my parents left me. Old Demon Greed's brows furrowed even further. It's too hard for us to draw any concrete conclusions based on that information alone. You keep meditating here and see if you can enter that state again. After exiting Nightmare's illusionary realm, you won't be able to re-enter it, so you'll have to wait here for your friends. All right, Tang Wuling immediately agreed before turning to Old Demon Gluttony before asking, was all that food you brought to me real? Is there any more of that? No. Do you know how much of my food you've eaten? The life force energy here is so abundant, you don't even need food. Just go and cultivate. Old Demon Gluttony grumbled before vanishing in a flash. Tang Wuling then turned to Old Demon Sloth, and even now, the latter was still filled with rage and indignation. He swept a sleeve through the air in a furious manner and also disappeared. Old Demon Desire chuckled. You've really hurt Sloth's self-esteem this time. I feel sorry for your friends. He's definitely going to vent his fury on them. Greed, are you really not planning to test him? Your test is the sternest of all of our trials. Old Demon Greed shook his head. There's no need for that. Unless I forcibly wipe away part of his memory, my test won't do anything. I'm sure this kid won't be blinded by greed. Tang Wuling couldn't help but chuckle internally. After all, he had always loved money ever since he was a child, so he was actually quite susceptible to falling into a trap of greed. Thus, the old demons departed, leaving Tang Wuling and his friends, all of whom were still doing different things. Tang Wuling was quite relieved to see that they were all fine, and aside from meditation, he couldn't really think of anything else to do. At the same time, he wanted to sense just what function the purple and green specks of light in his body served. However, no matter what he tried, he was unable to enter deep meditation again, nor was he able to ascertain the functions of those 2 specks of light. His soul power could be cultivated normally, and there was nothing amiss about the rotation of his soul power vortex. Either, it was as if those 2 specks of light merely existed in his body, but had nothing to do with him, and his energy was unable to affect them in the slightest. A month passed in the real world, so 4 months had passed in Old Demon Nightmare's illusionary realm. The other members of Shrek's 7 monsters finally concluded their nightmarish journey. The second one to awaken was Yi Xinglan, followed by Yuan and Yui, Shu Lizzie, Shi, and Shu Xiaoan. Yue's Henyu was the only one who was yet to awaken. When everyone heard Tang Wuling recount the ordeal that Yue's Henyu had suffered, Shu Xiaoan had a deep blush on her face for 2 full days, but no one could bring themselves to laugh. They were only horrified by just how terrifying these old demons were. Their tests had pushed them to the absolute extreme. Tang Wuling was struck by a rather peculiar feeling as he looked at all of his friends. They had spent over 4 months here, which was only less than 2 years in the illusionary realm, but everyone seemed to have grown up and were wise beyond their years. This was undoubtedly going to be a trip that they'd never forget. Yue's Henyu finally awakened 7 days later. His body shuddered, and as soon as his vision became clear again, he immediately caught sight of Shu Xiaoan. His lips trembled, and he sat down heavily onto the ground. I'm so sorry, Xiaoan. Tears almost instantly began to flow from his eyes. Everyone wore peculiar expressions as Shu Xiaoan rushed over to him before holding him in her arms and gently patting his back. It's all right, everything's in the past now. You did nothing wrong. I very nearly did the same thing. Yue's Henyu finally began to calm down after half an hour, yet he was still filled with hatred at the mere mention of Old Demon Desire's name. It's time for all of you to leave. Light flashed, and the 7 old demons appeared before everyone in unison with different expressions on their faces. All of Shrek's 7 monsters still couldn't help but be horrified by the sight of them, with the exception of Tang Wuling. They had endured far too much torture here, and they'd all been severely traumatized. Old Demon Greed smiled and said, I'm sure you'll remember your experiences here for the rest of your lives. Congratulations on completing this military training. All of you have lasted until the very end, and that's an extraordinary feat in itself. All of you are more than qualified to be the new generation of Shrek's 7 monsters, and now, you'll be facing your final test. No one will take you away from here. You have to leave through your power. I have to remind you that from now on, you're in the real world, and not an illusion. You have to face the North Sea Legion on your own, and if you die, you'll stay dead. The aircrafts you stole have appeared in the illusionary realm, but the process wasn't entirely fake. At the very least, I can tell you all that the military officials from the North Sea Legion that you've encountered all hate you with a vengeance. All right, you may leave at any time now. Chapter 846. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. They were going to leave after 2 whole years. They had had more than enough of this place. Tang Wuling turned to the old demons, and he could see hints of dejection and loneliness in their eyes. Senior, is there really no way for you to leave this demonic island? Alternatively, is there anything I can help you with or any requests that I can fulfill for all of you? Old Demon Greed shook his head, and Old Demon Scourge chuckled. We appreciate the thought, but we're nothing more than bodies of energy, so if we leave here, we'll immediately dissipate into nothingness without the energies of life and destruction to protect us. We're extremely lonely here, but we're able to live far longer than normal humans, so it's not all bad here. If you want, you can come back to visit us from time to time. Of course, we wouldn't mind putting you through another round of training. Let's go, Captain. Yue's Heng Yu shuddered as he tugged on Tang Wuling's arm. Tang Wuling's lips twitched before he suddenly yelled, "Attention, Shrek 7 monsters." Everyone immediately stood up straight beside him. Tang Wuling then continued in a solemn manner, "Oh, ugh." Shenzhen was gasping for air as she sat up in her bed. She had lost count of how many times she'd woken up in a cold sweat in the night during the past few months. The dreams were always so realistic. She was only completing a routine check of the Soul Bomb warehouse, but she encountered a completely unexpected turn of events. That man's face was still so clear in her mind. He had kidnapped her and threatened her sister. He then abducted her onto a Skyglide 17 aircraft, and in the end, the bastard ejected her out of her seat. All of her nightmares concluded with a strong sense of vertigo and weightlessness. Shenzhen could still clearly recall that when she'd awakened from this nightmare for the first time, she'd wet her bed in an extremely pathetic display. She had been humiliated beyond belief. That man truly existed, and he had once been detained by the Legion along with his friends before they stole an aircraft and escaped. But none of that had anything to do with her. She hadn't even met him before the day that she was taken hostage. So what had she done to deserve these nightmares? What was even stranger was that her sister had also suffered from similar nightmares that depicted scenes identical to those in her nightmares. Damn it. Piss off from my dreams. Shenzhen thumped the mattress beneath her with her fists and found herself unable to fall asleep again. She stood up before putting on her military uniform, then making her way over to a mirror. Due to how terribly she'd been sleeping recently, she constantly had dark rings around her eyes. In the past, she was able to fall asleep easily as she trained extremely hard during the day, but now, it was so difficult for her to get to sleep, so she had no choice but to dedicate more of her time to meditation. Shenzhen decided to go out for some air. After getting some fresh air into her lungs, she would return to her bed to meditate. At the very least, she couldn't suffer from nightmares during meditation. That bastard went to the demonic island. I hope he never comes back. Otherwise, he's going to pay for all of this. Shenzhen exited her room and wandered aimlessly through the base. She wasn't a high-ranking military officer, but she held an extremely important monitoring role, so all of the patrolling soldiers that were passing by extended salutes toward her. The North Sea Legion base was situated near the coastline, so the sea breeze made the nights quite cool and balmy. Only after standing in the breeze for a while did Shenzhen's frustrations abate slightly. Huh. How did I end up here? Before she knew it, she had unconsciously made her way to the Soul Bomb warehouse in her dreams. Her brows furrowed as she turned to leave, but she then suddenly stopped. Perhaps it was a good idea to visit the site of her dreams. Maybe that would give her some closure and rid her of these nightmares. Otherwise, it was extremely torturous to be going to sleep every day with constant fear in her heart. With that in mind, she made her way into the warehouse. With her high-level identification card, she quickly arrived underground on the elevator. All of the soldiers who were on guard duty extended military salutes toward her as a gesture of respect. Advisor Shen, are you still doing your rounds at such a late hour? The major who was responsible for managing the warehouse asked with a smile. Shenzhen was very beautiful, but he didn't dare to try and cross any boundaries with her. She was the sister of the leader of the entire Legion, so she held an extremely lofty position. She was only here at the Legion base to accumulate some experience, and it was said that she would return to the military soon for another deployment. Yes, I'm just here to have a look, Shenzhen replied with an aloof nod. No problem. Open the gate. Important warehouses like this Soul Bomb warehouse required 3 keys and a designated password to be opened. A pair of key-carrying captains immediately rushed over at the major's behest, and the only gate only began to slowly open after the input of a special password, as well as an scan from Shenzhen. The warehouse had many soul bombs stored within it, so it naturally gave off a menacing aura. There weren't any super soul bombs stored here, but the total value of all of the weapons here was still quite enormous, and it was one of the most important warehouses in the North Sea Legion base. After making her way into the warehouse, a sense of nostalgia immediately welled up in Shenzhen's heart. She was dreaming of this place every single day, so she felt as if she visited this place regularly, even though that wasn't the case. Shenzhen made her way through the warehouse and looked around at the soul bombs in a dazed manner. All of a sudden, she reflexively stopped in her footsteps. There should be 4 5th grade soul bombs here. Why have they gone missing? Bring out the warehouse records for me. She had stopped right beside a shelf that was stacked with soul bombs, but in her memory, there should have been 4 5th grade soul bombs here as well. She could clearly remember this as in her dream. That bastard had hidden near this shelf for a moment with her as his hostage. However, as soon as the words slipped out of her mouth, she regretted what she'd said. Those were nothing more than dreams. It was ridiculous for her to ask about details that she'd seen in her dream in reality. However, she received no reply for her request, and she reflexively turned around to look at the major that was responsible for managing the warehouse, just in time to see a hint of astonishment flash through his eyes. That's impossible. The last time she was here was a few months ago. All soul bombs of all types and grades had extremely strict storage regulations, and their positions couldn't be changed unless they'd been sent to the front lines. I'm asking you a question. Shenzhen was very smart, and she quickly realized that something was amiss. As such, her voice became quite cold as she exerted more pressure on the major. The major hurriedly put on a smile and said, "Those bombs were sent to the front lines, and it'll take me a while to get the records involved." Shenzhen commanded, "Get the records for me right now." The major hurriedly nodded and said, "Please wait here. I'll get the records for you right away." He turned and made a hand signal to the 2 captains as he spoke, and all 3 of them began to depart from the warehouse. "Why are all 3 of you going at once? Just one is enough," Shenzhen said in a cold voice. "All right." The major faltered in his footsteps, but when he turned around, light suddenly flashed, and Shenzhen felt a tremor run through her entire body. A strong wave of paralysis then immediately washed over her, and she slowly slumped to the ground. Her eyes widened in shock, and she couldn't believe that this was actually happening. Military officials who were responsible for managing soul bomb warehouses had to go through rigorous political reviews, but it was quite obvious that not only was there an issue with this major, the 2 captains were also accomplices. A sinister look appeared on the major's face, and he hurried over to Shenzhen before wrenching off the communicator in her chest. He did so in an extremely rough manner, so the top 2 buttons on her military uniform were also torn away. The buttons clattered to the ground, revealing a sliver of snowy white skin on her chest. However, she was completely paralyzed and couldn't even yell out. The major's breathing accelerated as he yelled, "Why? Why are you able to remember things so clearly? Even I can't remember how many bombs should be on which shelves." Shenzhen couldn't say anything in response, so she could only glare at him with a cold expression. A dejected expression appeared on his face. "I didn't want to do this. I know how severe a crime it is to sell soul bombs, but I had no choice. They abducted my entire family, and my son is in their hands. I really don't have any alternatives. I have to go now. If you want to blame anyone, then you can only blame yourself for being too nosy. I'll be taking you with me. You're the general's sister, so I'm sure you'll be very valuable to them, and perhaps they'll release my family in exchange for you. You two, carry Advisor Shen out of here. We have to leave right away. It's a good thing that it's nighttime right now. Inform the people on the outside that we're leaving right now." Chapter 847. The major had regained composure at this point, and he wrenched Shenzhen up from the ground. Right at this moment, he suddenly stumbled as he felt as if something had bumped into his leg. He immediately dragged Shenzhen aside along with him, following which a square block of metal began to rise up from the ground right before his astonished eyes. Immediately thereafter, a person crawled out of the opening, and the first things that appeared were a pair of shimmering golden arms that were covered in rhomboid scales. The heavy metal block was like a weightless toy in his hands that was tossed aside with ease, and in the next instant, he had already fully emerged from underground. Under normal circumstances, the major would have raised the alarm right away, but Shenzhen had just discovered his secret, so he certainly couldn't do that. "Who are you?" The major yelled as a paralysis laser shot forth toward the golden figure from the gun in his hand. The laser struck the man with unerring accuracy, but he managed to shield himself with one of his shimmering golden arms. A faint golden light emerged from the spot that had been struck by the laser, and the man examined his arms as he murmured, "It feels a little numb." Immediately thereafter, an indescribably fearsome aura erupted from his body, and the major felt as if he were facing a terrifying beast rather than a human. Just being in this man's presence was making him feel as if his blood were about to congeal in his veins. A series of figures sprang out of a hole in the ground, and in the next instant, the major completely blacked out. Tang Wuling looked down at the paralyzed Shenzing with a surprised look on his face. A long time had passed in Nightmare's illusionary realm, but he still immediately identified this advisor that he'd once held hostage. What a coincidence that they were meeting again here. They had just left the demonic island and infiltrated the base through the underground tunnel he dug out before, and one of the first people he encountered was this old acquaintance. Prior to leaving the demonic island, Tang Wuling had discussed some options with his friends, and it was concluded that the best course of action would be to leave through the tunnel he dug out before. After all, this was the method that was least likely to get them caught. As long as they could enter the North Sea Legion base, it would be much easier for them to depart. Furthermore, from everyone's experiences in infiltrating the North Sea Legion base in Nightmare's illusion realm, they could roughly deduce that this warehouse was quite close to the inland direction of the city, so they wouldn't have to travel far to escape from the base. On top of that, they had an additional advantage this time, which was that they weren't afraid of being caught. After concluding their demonic island cultivation, they didn't have to worry about being delayed here anymore. In the past, they really had stolen a Skyblade 17 aircraft from the base, but that was the only real aircraft that they'd stolen. The rest were all simulated by old demon Nightmare's illusionary realm. It was still a pretty severe crime, but they were Shrek 7 monsters, so the military wouldn't dare to do anything to them. All they could really do was inform the academy and ask them for compensation. As such, all they had to do was be detained after infiltrating the base, then fabricate a somewhat plausible explanation for everything that they'd done, and they'd be sent on their way sooner or later. It was just going to take longer that way. Unfortunately, with their personalities, they certainly didn't want to return to the academy under such embarrassing circumstances. That would be a waste of all of the torment they'd suffered on the demonic island. They had learned so many things, and they had to put their newfound knowledge to good use. However, what they didn't expect was to witness such a farcical scenario as soon as they entered the base. Tang Wuling had already heard a part of the conversation as he had underground, which was why he'd managed to appear in the nick of time. It had to be said, Tang Wuling was feeling rather strange at the sight of this Major Shenzing, whom he'd abducted once before. At the same time, his admiration for old demon Nightmare grew significantly. He was only a spirit body, but his spiritual power had to have reached an unfathomable level. Only then would he be able to grasp the situation within the entire North Sea Legion base. If he wanted to, he could most likely destroy the entire base with ease with his insane spiritual power. Shenzing stared up at Tang Wuling in complete incredulity. When her body had been completely paralyzed, and she heard that the Major was going to hand her over to some unknown enemy, she felt as if she were about to go insane. She was naturally aware of how terrifying it would be if she were to be held as hostage and used as leverage against her sister. Not only would that be a disaster for her, it would be a disaster for her entire family. In her nightmares, her sister had succumbed to Tang Wuling's conditions in exchange for her release, and in reality, she firmly believed that her sister would do the same thing. They shared an extremely close bond as sisters, and she knew that her sister definitely wasn't the type of person to turn her back on family. In important situations, her sister was more likely to turn to her subjective and emotional side rather than retain objectivity. If her sister were to commit a major crime for her sake, then her entire family would undoubtedly suffer dire consequences. As such, she would have rather died than be abducted by the Major. Every young woman had an ideal image of a knight in shining armor in their hearts, and especially in dire situations, everyone wanted a hero that would step forward to save them. However, never would Shenzing have thought that the man who had saved her would be the very same person whom she'd been cursing every day, and was constantly tormenting her in her dreams. Looks like you're in a rather sticky situation. Tang Wuling remarked as a faint smile appeared on his face. Shenzing was looking up at him in an urgent manner. She was filled with resentment toward him, but those were only dreams, and she knew very well who these young men and women were. It was just that everything was far too coincidental. Why had they appeared in the warehouse at a time like this? Could it be that she was still dreaming? Tang Wuling turned to his friends and said, "Strip off their clothes." Yes. Strip. Shenzing's face immediately turned deathly pale. What were they going to do? The despair that had just faded from her heart returned in full force. Had she jumped out of the frying pan only to land in the fire? Tang Wuling, Shishi, and Yue Tang dragged the Major and two captains aside before quickly taking off their clothes. Meanwhile, Yuan and Yue and Xu Shaoan positioned themselves in front of Shenzing while Yi Xinglan undressed her. Shenzing was completely flabbergasted as she was quickly stripped down. Yi Xinglan was of a similar height and figure to her, and under the makeshift barrier formed by Xu Shaoan and Yuan and Yue, Yi Xinglan also quickly stripped off her own clothes before exchanging them with Shenzing's. Don't worry, we're only borrowing your clothes. You've been struck by a paralysis laser, but it'll only take you 20 minutes to recover at most. You can take care of those guys as you see fit after that. Yi Xinglan gave Shenzing a reassuring pat on the shoulder before rising to her feet. She then began to gently rub her own face while glancing at Shenzing from time to time. Meanwhile, Xu Shaoan stood behind her and quickly styled Yi Xinglan's hair to resemble Shenzing's hairstyle. When Yuan and Yue placed Shenzing's military cap onto Yi Xinglan's head, Shenzing was flabbergasted by the sight of a spitting image of herself standing before her. It was like looking into a mirror. All done over there. Tang Wuling asked. All done. We just need 3 more sets of uniforms. Yuan and Yue replied. Shenzing's eyes swiveled toward the 3 approaching figures to find that they were none other than the Major and the 2 captains, all of whom were wearing their military uniforms. Chapter 848. Tang Wuling's voice sounded from within the Major's mouth. Using this for the first time really takes some getting used to. The bone structure changes feel especially weird, but I should be able to adjust quite quickly. Shishi, go capture a few people. Remember to find a fatter one for Lizzie. Sure thing. Shishi made his way out of the warehouse before issuing a command to 3 of the soldiers who were on guard duty outside. You, and you, come with me. We're going to do a tally of the soul bombs. The rest of the process was very simple. Soon, Advisor Shenzing, Major Chen, the 2 captains, and the 3 soldiers were standing in the warehouse while 7 identical people were lying on the ground. Tang Wuling made his way over to Shenzing before squatting down. You've seen so many of our secrets. Should I kill you so you can't reveal these secrets to anyone? Shenzing's eyes quickly swiveled from side to side. She couldn't speak and nor could she move, but the fear in her eyes was quite apparent. Tang Wuling chuckled. Just kidding. We're going now. Maybe we'll meet again someday. That Major won't be awake for at least a day, so you can do whatever you want with him after you regain your mobility. We've helped the North Sea Legion weed out a traitor here, and I'm sure that's more than enough compensation for the aircraft we stole. Let's go. Tang Wuling rose to his feet as he spoke before extending a respectful hand gesture to Yi Xinglan, and the 7 of them quickly left the warehouse behind her. In a short amount of time, Yi Xinglan had grasped Shenzing's demeanor. She walked with her chest proud and head held high, and there was a hint of haughtiness on her face as she made her way through the base. After exiting the warehouse, they closed the gate. Of course, they only closed it halfway as they didn't really know how to operate it. Tang Wuling scurried along beside her with a fawning smile on his face. Please don't be angry, Advisor Shen. There are some inconsistencies with the warehouse records, but I'll get them to fix that right away. Rest assured, everything will be back in order as soon as possible. Yi Xinglan harumphed coldly. I'll be reporting this to the higher-ups, and you better have all of these issues ironed out before an investigation squad is deployed here. Otherwise, you know what the consequences will be. Yes. Tang Wuling hurriedly nodded in response, and at this point, they'd already made it to the elevator. There's no need to accompany me any further, Yi Xinglan intentionally said. Tang Wuling hurriedly replied, that won't do. We have to accompany you to the surface. Advisor Shen, please put in a good word for me with the general. There were soldiers stationed all around them, but their conversation was impeccable, as were all their voices. Not only had the 7 old demons taught them how to disguise themselves, they were also taught how to infiltrate certain locations, how to change their figures, how to adjust their mannerisms, and how to alter their voices. With sufficient soul power as support, all of this became quite simple. It was just that the training process was rather painful, but it was nothing compared to the torture they'd suffered at the hands of the old demons. Ding. The elevator door was opened, and Tang Wuling made a respectful hand gesture while Yingling entered the elevator first in a proud manner. Tang Wuling and the others hurriedly followed suit. The elevator doors closed, and it quickly began to ascend. During the elevator ride, no one said anything. There were surveillance cameras in the elevators, and talking too much could potentially result in mistakes that could get their covers blown. Soon, the elevator carried them to the surface. With Shenzing's identification card, they were able to easily make their way out of the warehouse. Tang Wuling gave Yingling an eye signal, and they quickly ascertained which direction they needed to head toward before quickly striding over to a dark corner. Tang Wuling then pointed at a nearby military vehicle. It seemed to have just returned from patrol duty and was being driven toward them. Yingling said, "I'll go. We'll all go together." Tang Wuling made a hand signal, and everyone quickly emerged from the corner with Yingling leading the way. She removed her military badge before commanding, "Stop the car." Her epaulets were the best proof of her identity, and Shenzing was vastly renowned for being the #1 beauty of the Legion, so the soldiers on the car naturally recognized her. The leader of the group of soldiers was a second lieutenant, and he immediately got out of the car before extending a military salute toward Yingling. "Advisor Shen," Yingling said in a serious voice, "we're on an urgent mission and need to go out of the base, so we'll be temporarily taking your car." "Yes." The second lieutenant replied without any hesitation. If another major were trying to take his car, he would perhaps ask them some questions, but this was General Shen Yue's sister, and the goddess of the North Sea Legion. It wasn't often that an opportunity arose for him to make an impression on her, so he immediately agreed without any hesitation. The soldiers quickly got out of the car, and Yingling made a hand signal to Tang Wuling and the others. Everyone immediately piled into the vehicle with Shishi in the driver's seat, Yingling in the front seat, and everyone else in the back. They didn't say anything else to the soldiers before Shishi made a U-turn in an expert manner and drove straight toward the gate of the North Sea Legion base. In the Seoul bomb warehouse, Shenzing's eyelashes fluttered, and she could finally blink. Not long after that, she was gradually able to move her fingers again as well. She quickly regained feeling in her paralyzed body, and she strove to take deep breaths, activating her soul power to stimulate increased circulation in order to rid herself of her paralysis more quickly. She struggled into a sitting position, and complex emotions welled up in her heart as she glanced at Major Chen, the 2 captains, and the 3 soldiers, all of whom had been stripped down to their underwear. The crisis had been averted, but she didn't know how to feel. Never would she have thought that the bastard in her nightmares would save her from a fate worse than death. She struggled to her feet and quickly made her way over to the wall before pressing the alarm button. Loud sirens immediately began to blare throughout the entire warehouse, as well as the entirety of the North Sea Legion base. The Seoul bomb warehouse was an extremely important location, and an alarm being sounded from within it was an alarm of the highest level. Shenzing was well aware that after all this time, Tang Wuling and the others had most likely escaped long ago. There was no fierce battle, nor any blood being shed. Tang Wuling and his friends had already sped out of the North Sea Legion base on their military vehicle, and were quickly driving away from North Sea City. It had to be said that military vehicles were far better equipped than private vehicles. Not only did it have an advanced GPS, it was also very fast, and Shishi quickly pushed the car to as fast as it would go. "It's about time for us to abandon this car, so drive it to a more obscure location," Tang Wuling said. Shishi was rather reluctant to part with this car. "This car is so good, if only we could drive it all the way back." Yuan and Wei grumbled. "Are you stupid? Do you want to be attacked by the Legion? Get off this highway right now, and find a place to abandon this car." Shishi took the next highway exit, and they arrived in a small town. He found a forest before driving the military vehicle toward it. Everyone quickly got off the car before rushing toward their destination according to the direction that the GPS had pointed them in. Their target was very simple. Despite how reluctant Tang Wuling was to go there, they were heading toward the Seoul train station. It would be impossible to get away from the North Sea Legion base quickly unless they had a suitable mode of transportation. Tang Wuling had no doubt that the North Sea Legion would place the surrounding area into complete lockdown, and they couldn't continue to drive the military vehicle. As such, their best option was to take public transport, and high-speed Seoul trains were the fastest out of all of the public transport options available to them. Hence, they had no choice. As they ran, they reverted back to their original appearances. When they gotten quite close to the Seoul train station, one of them went to purchase a few sets of clothes, and they stripped off their military uniforms before changing into these casual clothes. At the same time, they altered their own appearances slightly before entering the train station. The 7 of them bought tickets separately, and all of them purchased tickets for the most recent train departing from the city. Only after getting onto the platform were they reunited. Due to the fact that this was only an intermediate stop, the platform was rather crude, and there wasn't even a roof over their heads, so the night breeze was rather chilly. Tang Wuling stood with his hands in his pockets, and the 7 of them were the only ones on the platform. "Boss, I finally feel like I've returned to life. We're not still in Nightmare's illusionary realm, are we?" Shishi suddenly asked. A wry smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. Who knows? The torture that they'd suffered on the demonic island had left far too strong of a lasting impression on them, to the extent that they still hadn't completely mentally recovered. In particular, Yue's Hang Yu would still space out from time to time. Chapter 849. Shu Lizzie said, "I finally understand why all of our teachers from the academy and the upperclassmen from the Battle God Hall were reacting so unnaturally at the mention of his military training. I never want to go back there ever again." Indeed, back when they departed, all of them had rushed into the sea as quickly as they could so they could get away from the demonic island as soon as possible. When I think about it, I kind of feel sorry for the old demons. Shu Shao sighed. A cold look appeared on Yue's Hang Yu's face. "You feel sorry for them? Who's going to feel sorry for us? Have we not been tortured enough by them? Calm down, Hang Yu," Tang Wuling urged. "We did indeed suffer horrendous torture at their hands, but we all have to admit that we've all improved significantly in many areas during these past few months. We've all grown up, and when we left the place, I suddenly felt like I was no longer a child, like I had truly become an adult." "You're right. We've all grown up," Yuan and Yui said with a faint smile. Tang Wuling suddenly said, "By the way, during old Demon Desire's trial, she showed me what happened to all of you. Do all of you want to know everyone's reactions?" Everyone suddenly fell silent, and their eyes widened in unison. Immediately thereafter, all of them exclaimed at once, "No!" The Seoul train arrived, and its headlights finally brought some light to this secluded little train station. Tang Wuling took a deep breath as he thought back to the horrific experiences he'd encountered on Seoul trains before walking onto the train first. They were finally about to go back. The horrendous military training was finally a thing of the past, and in the end, he refrained from telling everyone what old Demon Desire had shown him. Some things were simply better left unsaid. At the North Sea Legion base, Shen Yue listened to the reports from her subordinates with a thunderous look on her face, and her mood was sour to the extreme. Not only had a traitor appeared in the North Sea Legion, the traitor also held such an important position in the base. As the leader of the Legion, she most definitely had to hold herself accountable for this. Most importantly, her own precious little sister had almost been abducted. She had to get to the bottom of this and weed out all of the traitors in the Legion no matter what. Announce my orders to commence an exhaustive investigation right away. The Legion base will be placed into complete lockdown during the duration of this investigation. Yes. After Major Chen and his accomplices had been detained, the tally was completed, and it was discovered that over 200 soul bombs had gone missing from the warehouse. That many soul bombs were enough to raise a small city to the ground. Shenzing looked at her sister with a concerned expression, and even now, she still hadn't managed to completely calm her own emotions. "Don't put too much pressure on yourself, sister." Everyone had departed, so Shenzing reverted back to referring to Shen Yue as sister rather than general. Shen Yue's brows were tightly furrowed as she said, "It's no longer a matter of how much pressure I'm placing on myself. Our North Sea Legion has been infiltrated by traitors, so what about all of the other legions? What about the entire northeastern military region? This matter is far too serious to hide from our higher-ups. We have to report this right away. I'm most likely going to be handed a severe punishment, but I'll report you as the hero of this incident. After all, you were the one who noticed the missing soul bombs and detained Major Chen and the others in the end. No one saw Shrek 7 monsters in our base, so I can pretend as if they were never here and attribute everything to you. But what about you, sister? What kind of punishment will you receive?" Shenzing asked in an urgent manner. Shen Yue shook her head with a wry smile. "Who knows? I'll just have to bite the bullet and let the chips fall where they may. This is an extremely severe issue, and I may even be stripped of my position as the leader of this legion in the aftermath. After you receive the accolades for the role you played in all of this, I'll get you deployed away from here as quickly as possible. It's about time you went off on your own. Shenzhen nodded in a dejected manner. She knew that her sister was doing this to protect her. For some reason, after everything that had just transpired, she was able to have her first night of dreamless sleep in months. Shen Yue didn't deploy anyone to go after Shrek's 7 monsters because there was simply no point. How would they stand to benefit from detaining Tang Wulin and the others? Doing so would only expose more security loopholes in the North Sea Legion base, and Shenzhen's accolades would also be stripped away. As such, it was better to just let them get away and pretend as if they were never here. After all, regardless of how much the Imperial Sun Moon Sol Engineer Academy despised Shrek Academy, that was more so of a competitive rivalry rather than actual enmity. As a high-ranking military official, she had to look at the bigger picture rather than making hot-headed spur-of-the-moment decisions. After changing trains twice, Tang Wulin and his friends finally got onto a train that was heading toward Shrek City. Thankfully, they didn't encounter any terrorist attacks or any other incidents on this occasion. When the Soul train stopped at Shrek City, Tang Wulin was almost brought to tears. Having a safe and smooth train journey was such a wonderful feeling. He had been so tense and anxious the entire time, and he was thanking his lucky stars that no misfortune had befallen them. After getting off the train, he stretched his body vigorously. We're finally back. Are you guys heading back to the academy right away, or are you planning to do something else first? Tang Wulin asked. She replied, I don't want to head back to the academy so quickly. I need to take some time to relax. I almost went insane back there. I plan to take a trip back to visit my family. It's been a while since I last visited them. Yuanan, you should come with me. You know how the saying goes. Even ugly wives have to meet their in-laws sooner or later. This is a Chinese saying that's pretty self-explanatory. It basically means that no matter what flaws a woman has, she still has to meet her in-laws eventually. On a more general level, this basically means that one can't hide their flaws and must learn to directly face what needs to be faced. Yuanan Yui's body was radiating killing intent as she pinched Shishi's ear. Who did you just call ugly? Me. I was talking about myself. You're the most beautiful person in the world. Shishi hurriedly said with a grimace on his face. Yue's Hengyu chuckled in a goading manner. That's what you get. Shaoan, aren't you going to invite me to visit your family as well? Surely you don't find me too ugly to show your parents. Shishi grumbled. Are you trying to pick a fight? Shu Shaoan burst into laughter and replied, sure. I come from the same place as Shishi, so you come with me back to East Sea City as well. I'll introduce you to my parents. Yue's Hengyu and Shishi exchanged a disdainful glance, but Yue's Hengyu didn't turn down Shu Shaoan's invitation either. Tang Wulin chuckled as he shook his head before turning to Yu Xinglan and Shu Lizzie. What about you guys? Shu Lizzie turned to Yu Xinglan, and she said, I think we'll go back to the academy. We've all learned many things in the past few months, and I plan on taking some time to consolidate everything. Lizzie has also reached many rewards during this trip and needs to fortify his cultivation rank. All right, Tang Wulin said, then let's meet again at the academy in a month from now. After that, I think we should focus on training more together. Any objections? Shishi said, I'm fine with that. Yuan and Yui nodded in response. Yue's Hengyu chimed in. I don't have any issues with that, either. I think you're making the right decision, boss. After I graduate from the inner court, I plan to join the army with you. Shishi turned to Yue's Hengyu with a surprised expression. I didn't think you were so patriotic. Sengyu. Shu Shaoan chuckled. He just wants to join the army because he thinks military uniforms look really cool. After wearing that military uniform a few days ago, he's been talking to me about it non-stop. Yue's Hengyu's expression instantly fell. You can't just sweep the rug out from under your husband's feet like that. Shu Shaoan rolled her eyes at him. Who says you're my husband? Yue's Hengyu chuckled. We've already done the deed, so you're my wife now. I'm treating that illusion as reality, so as far as I'm concerned, we've already had physical relations. After all, old demon Desire's simulation was very convincing. Hey, Shu Shaoan blushed at the sight of his sly grin, and she grumbled. If you keep this up, I'm not taking you home with me. Yue's Hengyu hurriedly put on a serious expression. Yu Xinglan smiled and said, I think that's a good idea as well. We are supposed to be part of one entity, so we really should work on our teamwork. Also, joining the army really doesn't sound like a bad idea. After witnessing the North Sea Legion, I finally understood that our individual powers are still far too insignificant in the face of the entire military. We might not stay in the military forever, but I think it's important to at least familiarize ourselves with modern military standards. Hence, I also want to join the army with Lizzie after we graduate. Chapter 850. Tang Wulin was ecstatic. It would naturally be brilliant if he didn't have to part with his friends. He turned his gaze toward Shishi and Yuan and Yui, and Shishi was also looking at Yuan and Yui. Obviously, he couldn't make any decisions without Yuan and Yui's approval. A dejected look suddenly appeared in Yuan and Yui's eyes, and she shook her head as she said, I won't be able to join the army. After I graduate, I have something very important that I need to do. After her voice trailed off, she suddenly turned and walked away. Shishi was rather taken aback by this, and he gave Tang Wulin an apologetic smile before hurrying over to her. Tang Wulin looked on at the departing figures and murmured, Yuan seems to be dealing with some troubles. I wonder why she never mentioned anything to us before. Yu Xinglan said, I feel like it should have something to do with her background. Don't you think it's very strange that she possesses two martial souls of such a superb caliber at once? In particular, her fallen angel martial soul is extremely powerful, but it's also one that could easily draw someone into becoming an evil soul master. Yuan used to be a working student, and I'm sure she's hiding some kind of secret. Tang Wulin said, I think we should have a good chat with Yuan when we all meet up again in a month. We are a unified entity no matter what, so if any of us is in trouble, everyone else should do their best to help them. We're going as well, boss. Yue's Hengyu latched onto Shu Shaoan's hand before waving at Tang Wulin. Yu Xinglan turned to Tang Wulin and asked, We've all got places to go. What are you planning to do? Tang Wulin replied, I want to take a trip to the Tang sect, then go and visit my uncle teacher. I've also learned a lot from our trip to the demonic island, and I want to see if I can take this opportunity to make a breakthrough and become a 7th rank Saint blacksmith. If I can succeed, then we'll be able to consider making preparations to construct our future suits of 3-word battle armor. Yu Xinglan's eyes immediately lit up. Have you already made ample preparations? Tang Wulin smiled and replied, I have this indescribable feeling that tells me that I'm ready, but I can only truly tell when I give it a try. However, I think I should be able to get there with no issues with my uncle teacher's guidance. If another 6th grade blacksmith were to hear what he just said, they'd probably be tearing their hair out of their scalp with rage. Which 6th grade blacksmith would dare to say that they should be able to become a Saint blacksmith with no issues? Only Tang Wulin dared to make such a bold declaration. After all, soul refinement was extremely difficult to complete. Bestowing life upon a piece of metal was far more difficult than simply giving it sentience. In the lower grade suits of battle armor, the most important step was the design, followed by the construction, and the forging was the least important component. However, forging became the most important element when it came to high grade suits of battle armor as the essence of upgrading a suit of battle armor lay and upgrading the materials used. All of them were still only 1-word battle armor masters, and only after becoming 2-word battle armor masters would they be able to graduate from the inner court. Their future suits of 3-word battle armor would be an important indicator of whether they were going to become truly powerful beings in the context of the entire continent. Yu Xinglan said, I've already made the basic preparations, but we'll need to work together to upgrade everyone's suits of battle armor. We should be able to begin that process after we meet up again in a month, right? Tang Wulin nodded in response. I think so. That's why I want to strive to become a Saint blacksmith first. After ascending to that level, it'll be a lot easier to upgrade our battle armor, and I'll also be able to alleviate a lot of the pressure that you'll be facing. Yu Xinglan nodded in response. She was already a 6th grade mecha maker, but she was still very far away from reaching the 7th grade. At the very least, that was a level that she wouldn't be able to reach within the next 2 or 3 years. If she could work with a Saint blacksmith in the form of Tang Wulin, then the chances of successfully upgrading everyone's suits of battle armor would be increased significantly, and the quality of the battle armor would also most likely be higher. Everyone's soul power ranks were above 50 now, so it was time for them to upgrade their battle armor. All right, let's part ways here. See you in a month. The three of them parted after exiting the Soul train station, and Tang Wulin headed straight for the Tang sect. He was going there first as he wanted to visit the battle hall to see if there were any missions that had to be completed. After being absent for so long, he had to at least report his return to the organization. Furthermore, even more importantly, he was already a one-word battle armor master, yet he still hadn't raised his agent rank in the battle hall. He was still a white agent at the moment, yet a one-word battle armor master like him should be eligible to become a yellow agent. After arriving at the headquarters of the Tang sect, a thought immediately occurred to Tang Wuling. He wasn't wearing his agent uniform. A lot of his belongings had been confiscated by the academy, so it appeared that he really did have to return to the academy first. After leaving for so long, he had forgotten that his soul communicator and many of his uncommon medals were still being held at the academy. Everyone else appeared to have forgotten about this as well, and he didn't know if this would occur to Shishi and the others at some point. However, seeing as he already arrived at the Tang sect, he was going to pay it a visit first. After entering through the doors, Tang Wuling was surprised to discover that there were a lot more people than usual at the Tang sect headquarters today, and all of them seemed to be in quite a hurry. Tang Wuling hadn't visited the Tang sect on many occasions, so he didn't know all that many people here. Just as he was walking along, he suddenly caught sight of a familiar face. The brawny and bald Hall Master Zhao just so happened to be making his way out of the building. Tang Wuling obviously recognized him as he'd met this man back when Wu Zhangkong had first taken him here. Hall Master Zhao. Tang Wuling greeted with a respectful salute. This Hall Master Zhao's full name was Zhao Song, and he was the master of one of the 3 outer halls of the Tang sect, the Power Hall. Zhao Song clearly didn't recognize him, and he asked, "Who are you?" Tang Wuling spent 3 years in the Douluo Empire, then went into seclusion before going off to undertake military training, so it had been many years since he last met Zhao Song. At the time, he was still a growing boy, and he had since become a well-built young man. "I'm Tang Wuling, Hall Master Zhao." Tang Wuling. "Oh, I remember you." Zhao Song smiled as a hint of recognition appeared in his eyes, and he said, "I haven't seen you in many years. You've sure grown a lot taller. It's nice meeting you again, but I have to go and do something. You can go in and speak with Go Xiaoshu." He then quickly hurried away. Go Xiaoshu was the master of the battle hall, and Tang Wuling's direct superior. He was the one who had first recruited Tang Wuling into the battle hall. When Tang Wuling arrived at the battle hall, the doors were open, and there were many people gathered there as well. From the masks on their faces, it could be seen that there were many yellow and purple agents among them, and there were even a few black agents among their ranks. Tang Wuling stuck his head in through the entrance, and he didn't know whether he should go in. All of a sudden, he was stopped in his tracks by a yellow agent. "Who are you? Don't you know that the battle hall is off limits?" The yellow agent asked in a serious voice. Tang Wuling replied, "My apologies. I'm an agent as well, but I didn't wear my uniform today." "So, you're also an agent? If you're not in your uniform, then you're not an agent. How do you not know such a simple rule? Get out of here." The yellow agent then quickly rushed into the battle hall as well. A resigned look appeared on Tang Wuling's face. He was very curious about what was happening. After all, there were already close to 100 agents gathered in the battle hall, and most of them were at the yellow grade or above. However, he couldn't go in without his uniform. Just as he was preparing to leave, someone suddenly emerged from the battle hall. This person was wearing a red mask on his face, and Tang Wuling was extremely stunned to see this. He hadn't even heard of red agents in the battle hall, let alone seen one in person. Based on the hierarchical order of soul rings, it was undoubtedly the case that red agents were even more powerful than black agents. This red agent wasn't very tall or physically imposing, but he was radiating an unfathomable sense of pressure. Tang Wuling hurriedly stepped aside to open up a path for him. However, the red agent suddenly stopped and exclaimed, "Tang Wuling?" Tang Wuling was quite taken aback to hear this, and he asked, "You know me?" The red agent took off his own mask to reveal a familiar face to Tang Wuling. It was none other than the master of the battle hall, Go Xiaoshu. Tang Wuling immediately understood why this man was wearing a red mask. It made sense considering he was the master of the battle hall. "Hello, Hall Master Go." A faint smile appeared on Go Xiaoshu's face. "Why are you here today? And where's your agent uniform? Oh, by the way, I heard that you're already a one-word battle armor master now. Come with me, and I'll take you to upgrade your agent rank." He turned toward the administration area of the battle hall as he spoke. Tang Wuling hurriedly followed along and asked in a low voice, "Why does our battle hall look so busy?" Hall Master Go Xiaoshu sighed. "How could we not be busy when such a major incident has happened? Our battle hall has always made it our duty to protect the Federation. After all." Tang Wuling was rather taken aback to hear this. "What happened?" Go Xiaoshu was also quite surprised. "You don't know. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.